Hey guys, my name is Autumn Toller, and this is my Artifact Rhetorical Analysis project. Today, we are going to look at two different kinds of artifacts. The first artifact that we're going to analyze is a text-based article. It is an educational article that gives insight to fetal hearing development and also some tips and tricks for parents to test their own infant's hearing. The next artifact that we will be analyzing is a non-text-based artifact. The artifact that I have chosen is a painting, and it's super colorful and bright, and in the painting there's a crowd of people all lifting up their hands. This painting actually has a deeper meaning which we will unpack later. Let's begin with our text-based source. This source gave rich detail regarding fetal hearing development and also supplied the reader with extra information that discussed hearing after birth, ways for parents to test hearing after birth, and additional ways for mothers to bond with their unborn child. The picture that we see here was found in the article and gives some information visually that can help the audience understand fetal hearing development. Let's begin by talking about the purpose of the artifact. This article was written with the intent of informing others about fetal hearing development. It goes into great detail in month increments about the progress that the fetus is making, as well as the new sounds each month that it is able to hear. It also touches on hearing after birth and some of the milestones that babies experience month by month. And so after reading the source, if you read it thoroughly, then you'll be so much more educated on fetal hearing, and you should be able to talk about fetal hearing month by month and how each month varies in the developmental process. The next element that we are going to discuss is the audience. Although the intended audience of the article was not ever explicitly stated, we can assume that it was written for parents and soon-to-be parents. The article gives some approaches that parents can take when looking at their infant and testing their hearing. And so when a parent reads this, then they can take those skills that were talked about in the article and use them on their own infants. Also, the diction throughout the article was very simple, and so we can assume that it was written for parents. Maybe it was their first time as a parent, and so they have little or no background information on fetal hearing. Next, we are going to go over the use of conventions throughout the article. The use of conventions throughout the article helps it flow better and helps the audience understand the information better. So each of the subtitles throughout the article is bolded, and this helps draw attention to the topic that is being presented. So each subtitle is a different topic, and so if the parent is just quickly scrolling through the article and only wants to read about, for example, hearing during the 5th month of development, then they can just go to that subtitle and find it. Also, the use of proper grammar and spelling contributes to the article being super easy to follow along to. In addition to the bolded subtitles, there are 2 purple boxes found within the article. The first talks about ways that a mother can bond with their infant, and the second box goes over different approaches that a parent or guardian could take when testing their own infant's hearing. And the use of the purple in the boxes allows the reader to know that it's going to be covering a different topic. And so the layout of this source just makes it super easy for the reader to follow along and understand. Lastly, let's look at the appeal to ethos throughout the article. The author of this article understands how important trustworthiness throughout her writing can be. She's a certified gynecologist, which means that she encounters parents every single day. She quotes studies and pulls information from certified universities. So in combination with the accuracy of her information and her personal experience and education as a certified gynecologist, her article can be deemed as trustworthy. Next, we're going to take a look at the non-text-based source. I have chosen a painting called Celebration of Hands by Betty G. Miller. First, we are going to discuss the medium. The medium refers to how the piece is delivered. Miller used a visual medium, the painting, and it was super common for her to paint as an outlet and to paint to give outsiders an inside perspective on deafness. She used the contrast between cool and warm tones, such as the red against the blue, to draw attention to the hands being raised in the painting, which is the intended focal point throughout the piece. Her audience, or people looking at the painting, varied between people who could hear and who couldn't hear, which was why the simplicity of the piece was so important to her. Let's keep going with the rhetorical analysis. The creator of this painting is Betty G. Miller. You just saw a picture of her on the screen. She is an artist who focuses on deaf culture and specifically the oppression that deaf people face in today's society. She has firsthand experience to deaf culture because her parents were both born deaf, and she herself was born hard hearing, which means that her hearing is basically gone. She uses her firsthand experience throughout all of her artwork to spread awareness. Now let's take a look at the appeal to pathos or emotion throughout the painting. This painting can evoke a lot of emotion for someone who has experienced deafness themselves or has personal connections to someone who is deaf, and those people really can understand the meaning behind this painting. A lot of deaf people struggle to communicate and do so through relying on their hands and communicate through things such as ASL or sign language. While this painting does focus a little bit on the hardships that a deaf person can create, it also sheds some light onto the community that deaf people have created. Most deaf people are super proud to be deaf and want people around them to know that they're deaf and they're proud of it. And in the painting, everyone is raising their hands, which shows the strong community that's tight-knit that deaf people have created. Finally, let's look at the exigence, or the event that encourages the rhetorical discourse. Since the creation of more technological devices such as hearing aids and cochlear implants, there has been a lot of debate within the deaf community. Some people support them, and some people think that it's taking away from deaf culture because less people are considered deaf. And while that is going on, this painting focuses on the solid foundation that deaf people have created as a community, and that regardless of what's going on in the world, they still have each other to rely on, which is super important. Both artifacts revolve around hearing. The artifact revolves around information about fetal development, so how hearing develops, while the painting is more about deaf culture, so it would be the lack of the ability to hear, but still both of them revolve around just the central topic of hearing. Both of these sources do a really good job at invoking emotion for the audience. Hearing is such a big role in our lives, and we might not even realize how important hearing is unless you have hearing taken away from you. In the painting, for example, if someone is deaf, they can understand how hard being deaf is and all of the things that in everyday life they struggle with. And then in the article, new parents that are learning about hearing, their child might have a hearing impairment and they're just beginning to learn about it, which can also be super emotional. Also, both authors of each artifact has some personal connections to whatever they were talking about. So in the article, the author was a gynecologist, so she's worked with patients, she's worked with babies, and she really is informed about fetal hearing. And the painter of the painting, Betty G. Miller, was part of the deaf community herself, so she had a lot of personal connections to the painting. While both authors had a personal tie or connection to the topic of hearing, they went about their artifacts very differently. The first artifact was super text-based. She is a certified gynecologist, so she went through med school, and she used logos, and she included statistics, facts, studies from universities, while on the other hand, Betty G. Miller, the creator of the painting, really pulled from her heart when she was painting and appealed more to pathos, emotion. She wanted the people looking at her painting to see her troubles that she experienced while she was being deaf, but how she used the community around her to overcome them. I find both of these artifacts super intriguing. I hope to pursue a degree in audiology in the future, which is hearing science. So I think it's really cool to look at hearing from two perspectives, one being the very beginning of hearing and how it's forming, and then the other varying perspective is an individual who doesn't have hearing and who's been surrounded with people who also lack the ability to hear her whole life, and just seeing how the two perspectives are different. The biggest takeaway for me personally after analyzing these two sources was how much I should value the hearing ability that I have now, especially since a lot of other people are not able to take their hearing for granted.